Chief Business Official, Ms. Andy Stubbs, Executive Assistant to the Superintendent and Governing Board, Ms. Erica Madrigal, IT Systems Analyst, Mr. Derek Machado, and providing translation this evening is Mr. Paul Huertas and Ms. Isidra Mencos. I would like to allow the translators an opportunity to explain how to use the interpreting feature on Zoom at this time.
Esta tarde va a haber servicios de interpretación en español. Si ustedes desean acceder a la interpretación en español, favor de hacer clic en el icono del globo terráqueo que va a aparecer dentro de unos minutos en la parte de abajo de su pantalla de Zoom, y una vez hagan el clic pueden escoger el idioma español o Spanish. Gracias.
Thank you, Isidra, and thank you, Paul, for your service this evening. We are delighted that you're viewing us on Channel 27, Zoom, or our YouTube channel. A copy of this board meeting video will also be available on our website at www.stalenaunified.org. In connection with closed session items A and B, the board discussed the issues and gave direction to the administration. Please stand and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, members of the public are entitled to speak on matters not on the agenda. You are requested to state your name and address and keep your comments concise, brief, and limited to 3 minutes. Is there anyone present who wishes to publicly comment on items not on the meeting agenda? Were there any written comments submitted by members of the public?
There were no written comments submitted.
Thank you. At this time, we're moving on to item 7A. That would be recognition of the St. Helena Hospital Foundation for providing COVID-19 vaccines for school staff. I would like to call on Mr. Christopher Heller.
Yes, good evening. It gives me great pleasure to recognize Glenn Newhart of the St. Helena Hospital Foundation for his and their incredible support of our educational staff in receiving the Moderna vaccine. As our community is aware, we've been open for full in-person instruction since November 2nd. And while it's presented many new challenges and opportunities, I think we all agree it was in the best interest of our students. And we always say that schools are a reflection of the unwavering support of our community, and there's no better example than that than the St. Helena Hospital Foundation's support of our educators. Specifically, I want to recognize and thank Glenn for making the logistics around vaccinating just under 200 employees run so efficiently. Many employees have told me directly how appreciative they are of the Foundation's generous support and how they feel very respected as an educator as a result of this. So I know I represent many employees, and when we offer our gratitude and sincere thanks to Glenn and the Hospital Foundation. So we prepared a letter that was signed by not only the Maria Haug Board President, by the district, but also our bargaining groups, SHTA and Csea, to just thank the foundation. It's just an amazing effort on their part, and it really did make the educators feel valued in their work and also safe. And that's, as you look around the state and the country, that's a number one concern of many of the teachers and employees in coming back. So again, to Glenn, thank you very much.
Is there any public comment on this agenda item? Trustees, any comments?
No comment, but just it's like everyone here, just a huge thank you to the St. Helena Foundation, St. Helena Hospital Foundation. Pretty amazing work. Yeah.
And I know that it's given our staff, an added peace of mind to stay in the classroom and serve our students and be out in the community, as well as all of our staff. But I know that there was a sense of jubilation with that coming their way. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving on to item 7B, presentation of the state seal of civic engagement. I'd like to call on Mr. Joe Brody.
Yes, good evening, everyone. And while the presentation is pulled up on the screen, as introduced, my name is Joe Brody, student representative to the Board of Trustees, and this is a little informational item on the state seal of civic engagement. And just to start off tonight's presentation with a little overview of what is a state seal specifically. And in the state of California, there are two widely spread state seals that are really recognition of achievement for high school students, either on a diploma or on a certificate of completion, highlighting academic achievement and displayed on the diploma. And of course, those two that are commonly used are the Golden State Merit Seal and the State Seal of Biliteracy. And those state seals encourage academic success and encourage students to be active members in their community. The Golden State Merit Seal focuses on academic achievement across the board during a high school career, and the State Seal of Biliteracy, as the name implies, focuses on biliteracy of students. So moving on to that next slide, what specifically the State Seal of Engagement. So Assembly Bill 24 passed in 2017 required the state superintendent of schools to provide criteria for the seal by January of 2020. All state seals have certain criteria they need to be met that students need to achieve during their high school career in order for that to be affixed onto their diploma or certificate of completion. The criteria for the State Seal of Civic Engagement was adopted in September of 2020. And what is unique about this state seal is that the 5 criteria that we'll be looking at later in the presentation are much more broad than the 2 state seals already in place, ensuring that this, because, civic engagement is a little more broad than just, passing your history class, passing your Spanish class. And so making sure that students, whether they be in alternative school settings or have unique or unconventional ways of expressing their civic engagement, have the opportunity to achieve this high honor. And then looking at this next slide, and you also have the implementation guide provided by the state that myself, my peers, and the site admin at the high school have been following. There are 5 different criteria that have been established in order for a student to earn the State Seal of Civic Engagement. Number 1, being engaged in academic work in a productive way. 2, demonstrating a competent understanding of the United States and California constitutions, functions and governments of local governments, tribal governments, structures and organizations, the role of a citizen in a constitutional democracy, and democratic principles. Number 3, participating in one or more civic engagement projects that addresses real-world problems and require students to identify and inquire into civic needs or problems, consider varied responses, take action, and reflect on efforts. Number 4, demonstrating civic knowledge, skills, and dispositions. And number 5, exhibiting character traits that reflect civic-mindedness and a commitment to positively impact the classroom, school, and community. Now, as you flip through the packet provided by the state, you'll notice that some of these, under the criteria, say that local education agencies must and local education agencies may. And I'm meeting with Mr. Cinto and a few other students today. You'll see my very written up version as we dive really deep into how can we structure this criteria to best fit our students. Of course, students across the state are going to have different access, different opportunities to be civically engaged based on the communities that they live in. So how can we really make sure that this state seal and the criteria that we set forward is best tailored so that our students, regardless of their civic expression, have the opportunity to go for this really high achievement? And then, of course, it always brings to why. Why would we want to support something like this? And of course, we always want our students to strive for that high academic success and high success in their community. Looking at promoting democratic aims and productive collaboration. One of the criteria focuses a lot on self-reflection. What has the student learned as they've been doing this? It's all great to go out and do good, but as an individual, reflecting on that is a really key aspect of it. Also looking to increase student engagement, not only in their school, but also in their greater community. We are very fortunate to have a community that supports our students as strongly as St. Helena does, and really just continuing to bolster those connections. And then, of course, your very standard developing 21st century skills and supporting civic supporting civic literacy. Looking at, as emerging adults in a functioning democracy, what does that mean? What does it mean to use your voice, really? And then as we move on to the next slide, it kind of outlines our next steps. At the end of January, I was very fortunate to be able to present, thank you, Mr. Heller, to the Equity, Culture, and Climate Subcommittee before this presentation was brought to the governing board, just as a check-in, in the work that I've done in the past with some other members of this board. We've used the Equity, Culture, and Climate Subcommittee just kind of as a check-in, looking at those road stops. Are we hitting those marks that we said that we're going to? And then, of course, we have today's presentation to the governing board. And so looking at our next steps, would we really going further into this curriculum with all stakeholders, saying how do we want to best tailor these criteria? Later in March, we would then bring it back to you lovely board members, looking to bring also a resolution forward, adopting the state seal and further evaluating the criteria. And then if adopted by the governing board, March and April would be really pushing it to students. We are still looking, Mr. Shinto and I are still looking at how, if students graduating this year would like to submit criteria that would be met to receive the state seal of engagement, what that would look like, because of course this is not a process that we want to rush. We want to make sure that we really have something that stands the test of time, regardless of whatever a political climate may be or whatever our students are choosing to engage in. So as you kind of wrap up that timeline, are there any questions or comments? I am more than happy to go deep into any of the curriculum or the criteria areas, if the board would like to do so.
So first of all, I'm going to ask if there is anyone wishing to publicly comment on this agenda item.
Is there anyone participating via Zoom who would like to participate in public comment? If so, please raise your virtual hand at the bottom of the screen. There's no public comment.
And were there any public comments submitted?
There were no public comments submitted.
Thank you. So board members, any questions or discussion?
Do we only have one that we hand out, or do we have a set number that we hand out, or is it just kind of whoever we feel deserved it?
So what is unique about this state seal, to answer, it's a kind of a yes and a no. With the state seal of biliteracy and the state seal, or excuse me, the Golden State Merit Seal, those are awarded to every student who meets those set criteria. With this, we are still looking at how the awarding process would be given, because the criteria is a little more subjective and much more interpretive. We are still working through that because one of the things that we talked about in my meeting with Mr. Shinto today was, because the criteria is subjective, you do have the opportunity that a student could submit something and it does not meet the criteria. So unfortunately, I don't have a definitive answer, but we would hope that if the criteria is well established, any student, we have the opportunity to submit materials. It talks about submitting a portfolio, looking at that self-reflection, that any student who wished to could submit materials to be evaluated based off of the 5 criteria areas.
I have 2 questions, actually. One, is it only going to be awarded in the senior year, or can it be awarded beforehand? And my second question would be, would it make sense to have a modified criteria for this year?
I'm going to answer your second question first. Yes, it would make a lot of sense. And that is something that we are looking at if graduating seniors, now that we are implementing this criteria, would like to have this affixed. And then to answer the first question, it's a little complicated based off of the criteria that the state says that schools must follow. It talks about incentivizing projects to start even at the primary school level. So the project outlined in criteria 3 could be done at any time. It would then be submitted during the high school career, as is my understanding at this time.
Yeah.
Well, first comment, just want to congratulate you. Obviously, the work you've been doing this year is really remarkable, and you're setting the bar high for our next student rep. But I'm really happy to see the work that you've been able to accomplish throughout this year. I guess kind of a question, comment, but also tagged along with President Haug's as far as the work that would be, or the modified. Do you know if there's any students that are potentially doing any kind of similar work right now, kind of earlier, throughout the year that you see, or is it something that people would just start trying to do toward, as it gets closer to the criteria?
Yes, we do have some students that that bubble to the top. The process that we're thinking of right now would be reaching out to those students, letting them know that this is something that the school is looking to implement, making them aware so that they could then prepare. Once, if the criteria was to be implemented, then it would be publicized much heavier, hopefully throughout the grade levels, because one of thing that the state encourages is, start them young, as it were, with civic engagement. So we have a few students that we've started talking to, just letting them know, and we're going to start continuing to publicize this as the criteria becomes a little more concrete. That also brings us to the unique situation that we're presented with, establishing the criteria in the second semester of the school year for our graduating seniors. So it's definitely an ongoing conversation with students that we assume would be interested, that we think would be interested, but we're definitely going to work on presenting it to our high school seniors.
I have one more, just follow-up question, sorry. Also, is there anything, I know you kind of hinted on it, but just as far as how you'll go about reaching, traditionally students maybe that aren't as engaged in, extracurricular activities, or is there kind of a strategy in place that you guys are looking at to reach maybe students that wouldn't normally go out for this kind of?
Yeah, of course. So criteria 1, luckily, is very broad, being engaged in academic work in a productive way. And later we'll see, presenting in criteria 2, a passing grade. Interdisciplinary coursework may also include civic aspects of government, passing your history class. So the direction that I personally see this going is, yes, we kind of allow the criteria to seep into the classroom a little bit more, so that hopefully we can catch those students who may or may not choose to participate in something like this. So because some of the criteria is intertwined with the curriculum presented in the classroom, it allows for opportunities to develop in the classroom to then be kind of broadened out to the community, so everyone at the school would have a much more equal and equitable access to reaching the State Seal of Civic Engagement.
Thank you, Joe, for this. This is great. I'm very excited about this. My question is, once St. Helena High School adopts a modified criteria to use for our students, does that have to be sent to the state for approval, or is it just we take what we need and use it and implement it on our own?
As far as I'm aware, we take what we need and we implement that, and then at the end of the year, we say, hello, State of California, we need X amount to be affixed. That is just my knowledge at this current time, and I'd be more than happy to look into that for you.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you. And I'm assuming then between counselors and Mr. Cinto, they determine that the criteria has been met, and that's how the seal is awarded. Okay, thank you. It's great.
Jeannie?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Joe. This is great. And I don't have any questions because they've all been answered, what I was going to ask. So thank you very much. Thank you.
President Haug, may I ask permission to ask Mr. Heller to re-present a thank you to Mr. Newhart? He just came on.
Oh.
I know he's been working in the clinic, and so I think he was delayed, and I would
Yes.
love for him to hear the appreciation.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you.
So we're going to be going back to item 7A.
Good evening. It gives me great pleasure to recognize Glenn Newhart of the St. Helena Hospital Foundation for his and their incredible support of our educational staff in receiving the Moderna vaccine. As our community is aware, we've been open for full in-person instruction since November 2nd. And while it's presented many new challenges and opportunities, I think we all agree it was in the best interests of our students. We always say that schools are a reflection of the unwavering support of our community, and there's no better example than our St. Helena Hospital Foundation's support of our educators. Specifically, I'd like to recognize and thank Glenn for making the logistics around vaccinating just under 200 employees run so efficiently. Many employees have told me directly how appreciative they are of the Foundation's generous support and how they feel so respected as an educator. I know I represent many of the employees when we offer our gratitude and sincere thanks to you, Glenn, and the Hospital Foundation. Thank you for coming on tonight.
Thank you guys so much. We're so grateful for you being open. My son is a student at the high school. We love what you're doing. We're here to support you. And today was a massive day. We did 1,017 people today. We look forward to finishing up all Up Valley teachers tomorrow. And thank you.
Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you. So actually, we'll be returning now to item 7B. I do have one more question, Joe. The cord for community service, do you think that that will kind of maybe disappear with this, or is the aim to keep them separate? Or maybe they will merge into one award.
The current aim, and this is all, of course, a part of a much longer ongoing conversation, would be to keep them separate because of the few stipulations that the state does make concerning what is civic engagement versus community service. So at the current time, as we're working through the criteria, the intention would be to keep the two separate.
Thank you. Any more questions? Okay. On to item 7C. Again, Joe, presentation by the student representative of the board.
And Mr. Browdy, we love your enthusiasm, and our interpreters are having a challenging time following you. If you could slow your pace just a touch.
Of course.
Thank you.
And thank you to our interpreters. We really do appreciate the work that you do. Alrighty, this of course is the student representative report for the month of February, and I have to admit, before we get into it, I was very, very close to just naming this report Back in Business. It, you know, as Mr. Heller said, we've been open since November, and here we are in February of 2020, and our teachers are vaccinated thanks to the great work of our community, and we're here having an in-person board meeting. It's, you know, the number I see all the time is, 70 districts in the whole state are back for in-person instruction. And our little 1,200 student district of St. Helena, here we are however many months later, back in business with students in the classroom, in the learning model that they best see fit. I don't think we pat ourselves on the back enough for that. But, of course, I started with a quote last month, and I was inspired to start with one this month. This is from our ASB president, Eleanor Islani, and even though it's not been a normal year and there have been challenges, I am just so grateful to be interacting with my teachers and my peers. We had our ASB meeting a few weeks ago, and it just goes to show that, St. Helena, we can do anything if we really put our mind to it. I know that there were long, long nights, and a bunch of hard work went into bringing all of our students back on campus. But it has been such a success that words, they can't really quantify something like that. And I am just grateful to this board, to our executive staff, and to our teachers, our custodial staff, our tech gurus. Derek, I'm looking at you in the back there. Just thank you so much. And I'm getting off track. So on to that next slide. Very excited to be reporting on the paper tutoring rollout and talking a little bit about the overall response from our students, and, out of the park on this one again. I just have so many good things that I can say. The response has been positive across all grade levels, and, this is through no formal digging of mine that I come to this conclusion. And it comes up, and you see people on the street, and they're like, paper. Mark that box checked. And we have been looking at continuing the rollout here at the high school. There was a nice video that was put out on the high school social media pages today and will be sent out to parents, really encouraging students at our higher grade levels. to continue to use paper, going into the strengths of paper, especially at the higher grade levels. The tutoring is personalized to the classes. That has been a really high selling point for our students. And the essay review service that is available has also been really beneficial to our students across all grade levels, but especially here at the high school and at the middle school. So another success. Thank you to Mrs. Mary Allen and Mr. Heller and everybody. I have a lot of thank yous tonight, guys. Looking at this next slide, talking a little bit about student engagement. As will be reported later in the meeting, we have had 2 Lcap committee meetings focusing on 2 student panels, which again were quite a success, talking to those students who were involved and the site principals, the RLS in the high school, the panel at the RLS focusing on student engagement and the learning models that have been employed by the district. And then more of a focus, of course, as we've been focusing on here at the high school, with equity and social justice, really getting the student perspective on those 2 different focuses of the high school. And then also very happy to report that in conjunction with the city of St. Helena, the Associated Student Body of the high school is looking to adapt their constitution to add a new position to further increase and bolster the connection that we've been making with the city of St. Helena and the school district. So all of this is still in the works, but I just thought that you all would appreciate that as we have been working and talking about increasing those connections with the city through all of our stakeholders, whether it be our staff or our students, we are really making some great progress on that. And then a few things that weren't included into this presentation, but if you did see the front page of the news of the St. Helena Star last week, you'll see some of the amazing artwork that our elementary school students have been doing in conjunction with Valentine's Day. There is a wonderful Zentangle piece on the front page. And thank you to Mrs. Rowland and Mrs. Pearson for help facilitating that. And then I also received an invitation from Mrs. Sanguinetti to zoom into some of the primary school classes, so I am very much looking forward to that. I know it is always have a great time whenever any of us go down to the primary school, and I look forward to reporting on that in the coming presentation. This was a quick one. Are there any questions or comments?
Is there any public comment?
There's no public comment.
Thank you. Board members, any questions or comments for Joe?
Just a thank you to you, Joe.
As always.
That's great. Thank you for all those updates.
And then I would like to clarify one thing looking at the paper tutoring rollout. We will be doing a much more thorough investigation of our student response that I will be bringing back to the board.
Thank you for that. On to item 8A. I'd like to call on Julio for his presentation on the elementary school.
Dang, Joe, you're always such a hard act to follow. But I think I got you beat tonight. I got pictures. I got my.
I know. I'm looking forward to it. I've seen some great pictures as I was looking at this earlier.
You know. No, first I want to just start off by thanking Principal Pearson and Superintendent Wilson for inviting me to my new school, the elementary school. I've been at the high school, I think, for the last couple of years. So it's as much as I love visiting the high school, it's fun to come and visit the elementary students. And so I visited on February 16th, so this Tuesday. So I took a bunch of pictures, but I just wanted to highlight some of the ones here that I took. First, I wanted to kind of just talk a little bit about the classroom. And just really the great visit that I had. I had the opportunity to visit, I think, almost all the classrooms except for maybe one, and just get an opportunity to really see how everything looks inside. And I got a nice kick seeing a lot of students that I probably haven't seen for a year. Kids that I've coached, friends of my sons, you know, in the school grades, and so just kind of seeing kids look over and recognize me and waving, it was really fun to see these kids, because again, I haven't seen some of these kids for over a year, so just seeing how they've grown was fun to do, and also just having a chance to talk to some of my son's former teachers was also a fun little thing to do. Again, I visited all the classrooms. I did have an opportunity to talk to some of the staff, not the teachers in particular, but the staff, and just really personally thank them for the work that they're doing, and just how everyone is really going above and beyond and doing the extra to make this a success. So really the first observation off the bat, and it wasn't, or actually still on slide one, sorry. If you can go back, that one's good. Just really the observation more than anything was students from every classroom that we walked into. Like, kids were really well behaved, focused on their learning, and it was just from 3rd to 5th grade. So that was great to see. Engaged in their learning, obviously following the safety protocols. I mean, it's as close to normal as it can be. Obviously, the masks and the shields are there for safety, but the kids look comfortable in their setting. As far as the teachers, they're just each classroom is different. I think they're finding their ways to be really creative in their own teaching strategies. So the pictures that I picked, the first one on the top left, I picked that one. That was Miss Ashley Wright's class, and so I liked the fact that they had the distance learner on the big screen, and so they were having a conversation with the student, and just involving the distance learners with the in-person learners, and finding a way to involve those students. The picture on the right with the big hand on there, this was Miss Rodriguez's class. She was using this device to basically show what she's doing on her handbook, and so the kids are really following along. So I thought just seeing different ways that each classroom is adapting, and the teachers are making it work for their students. The one on the little one with the writing on the desk, that was interesting. I remember getting in trouble for writing on the desk, and now they're encouraging it. So Ms. Pearson said that it's a new a strategy that they're using for math, where they give kids the pens, and it allows them to be more open to trying and being able to erase mistakes versus writing the stuff on the paper. So I thought it was cool to see that. And then the last little picture, in all the classrooms, I think the 4th grade classes, they were doing Black history. So they were learning about Black history individual. And so the thing that was cool about that was that all the grade levels were doing it at the same time, and just the kids were getting the opportunity to have conversations about it. So learning the materials and just being thoughtful about what they're learning, I think, is important. I'll go ahead and switch to the next. Oh, actually, before I go to that one, and the kind of what Miss Pearson or Principal Pearson was highlighting was the grade level work that's going along with the teachers, and how they're working very closely at the grade level. To be consistent across that grade level, and what the kids are learning. And so obviously we've all said it tonight. Joe's mentioned it. President Haug just released that video, just really thanking our district teachers, not just at the elementary but the entire district, because they do deserve to be recognized, just as far as the tremendous work that they've done, and the effort, the best effort that they're giving our students. So I think it's a great example of them being resilient, and we're basically following the lead. Parents, staff, and students are seeing how they're adapting, and so it's allowing our students to be successful. I'll go ahead and go to the next slide, please. All right, so this next slide is just dedicated to another portion of staff that maybe we don't see behind the scenes, that is making this again a success at our schools. The support staff, special ed teachers, the custodians, the cafeteria employees. And the reason I wanted to share these pictures, the bottom right, that's Mr. Martin. He's our PE teacher. So just the fact that we have a lot of teachers that are shifting roles and doing other things to support students. So he's the PE teacher, and he's doing reading support for students. So we went in there and visited him, and then had an opportunity to thank the cafeteria employees and the custodial, which again, those are two big portions that in the past maybe we overlooked, but this year even more so it's become like so important for students to receive their food, and obviously keeping the schools clean. So that was great to thank them in person. And then the support staff as well. So we have the bottom left picture, support staff working hard with our students, with our learning recovery, and so they're doing their work. And then I wanted to share this top picture. This is a special education student with their teacher. And we went in there, and if you notice that little on the top left corner, that little mirror, we walked in and I was wondering what that was about. And so she said that they put that so that the staff can see the screen of the student to make sure that they're doing their work. So just little things like that where teachers are adapting and just being efficient and creative, to be honest, to be, to give students the best learning experience that they can. So I do want to recognize all those employees as well that are doing kind of the behind the scenes work that maybe we don't see, or that the community might not see unless you're visiting the school. So I want to recognize that staff as well. And then the last slide, if we can. So this was exciting as well. Obviously, this our kids have been able to do some outdoor physical activity, but this was something that Principal Pearson shared with the outdoor facilities, so the play areas. Those are finally have been approved through the guidelines to be open. So this was, I think she said, the second week of the primary school and the elementary being able to use the structures. So yeah, there's guidelines behind it. It's individual classes that are playing on the structures at once, and it's required that the students do either sanitize or wash their hands before and after the use of the structure. But I just thought it was great to see like kids running around, even though they're wearing masks and being distanced, but they at least are having that opportunity to get some playtime, which is important, especially at that age. Overall, just wanted to summarize kind of the final takeaways from the conversation with Principal Pearson that I had. Obviously, the big thing, or the kind of theme, is the grade level teacher work that they're doing and kind of the planning. She was talking about how they've been focusing on the students and what they've done so far in the first, I think, the 12 weeks since we've reopened, and how they're really looking at the next 4 months and seeing how they can capitalize and really get those students as much learning as they can in those 4 months, because a lot of the students, they are used to kind of the guidelines, wearing the mask, and so kind of really trying to focus on what they're going to be learning in the next 4 months. And then continuing the planning as well through the summer. And then finally, I think that the teacher collaboration, she talked about that, and just how working to share the information, not amongst the teachers in the grade, and then passing on that information for the other teachers so they can kind of pick up where they left off. So the final thing, just with the conversation that I thought was important, was Principal Pearson talked about just continuing to acknowledge the work that's being done by our students and our staff, I think, and really focusing on what's being done versus looking at what they're not getting or what they're not receiving. So I think it's important as parents and our community to really just acknowledge and be grateful for the work that students and that they're accomplishing, and also what our staff has been able to do. So I think that was a great sentiment that I agree with. So I enjoyed the visit, and I look forward to visiting again. If there's any questions, I'll try to answer.
Thank you, Julio. Is there any public comment?
There's no public comment.
Board members, any questions for Julio? Thank you for sharing, Julio. It was really, really lovely photos to see. On to the subcommittee reports. First up, I have the Lcap steering committee. And will that be?
That
you,
will be
Lisa?
me. I have the unfortunate position of following Mr. Brody and Trustee Olguin. So the recap on the Lcap. And we are going to see a lot of this information come to us tonight in reports from our staff. So I'm going to kind of give you the high level items that we discussed and what happened. And I would say that we did the one in January with the RLS students, or student panel, which is really a huge perk of being on that committee, because that is really great to get those students involved. They're given a series of questions. They are selected by Principal Cox. Having it on Zoom is obviously a different, a feeling than when we used to have them in person in the room. So in that respect, maybe you lose a little something, but overall, the RLS students were very articulate. They were eloquent in their thoughts, and they had come prepared. And the topic of that panel was student engagement. They answered their questions as they needed to, about ways to increase engagement, how they can feel connected to students, suggestions of how to increase connection in a social distancing time. And I just think it's one of those great things that we get to see and hear from, as I call them, our customers. I mean, that we're the people we're serving. So that part was great. And let's see, then we moved on over to the high school. And Jeannie, you can come fill in after if you'd like. We also, that was the focus of that student panel. We had 4 students, and we also had an alumni who is now employed by our district. She's a paraprofessional. And that was a really great panel on social and racial equity and justice. And Mr. Cinto facilitated that with questions about asking for personal experiences, and I think correct me if I'm wrong, but I felt like everybody who was witnessing that interaction in that panel came away with a little bit slightly different takeaway of what maybe we were expecting, to hear of the instances of when they felt like either their voice may have been stifled because of race or social issues. And it was a great springboarding point for the continuation of the work that Mr. Cinto is going to be doing with the students on the call to action. There's other great things but that was a highlight of both Lcap committee meetings the last 2 months. Jeannie, if you'd like to fill in.
And I would like to add that with the high school student panel, we did with each of the meetings, we do a reflection time at the end. And each during the reflection, what we all said and was thinking was how empathetic the students were in their answering of their questions and where they were in their lives, and they were advocates for each other, and then we all commended them on speaking up and stating their minds, and it was really. Both the RLS student panel and the high school student panel makes you really think how mature our students are, and how important it is to listen to what they have to say, because they have a lot in their minds, and I think that it's having the opportunity to be able to speak out. They seem to feel very comfortable about that, and it's great for us as adults to learn from our students all the time. So yeah, I would agree. Lisa, it was they were very interesting panels. Very good. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa and Jeannie. I just want to chime in that I think that our student panels for the Lcap are such a great addition to our district that we've had over the last few years. I know that they've always been one of the highlights of my year when I was able to listen to them. So I want to thank our students, and I want to thank the administration also for starting this dialogue that's so important. Now we're moving on to the Equity, Climate, and Culture Committee, and that was Forrest and Julio.
All right, so that was on January 27th. I think we had new members in attendance, new parents. So that was always good to get new members to our committees. On that one, let's see, we had Joe. Joe talked about the civic engagement, which he already mentioned, so I won't go too much into detail about that, just other than saying that it's an excellent opportunity for students, and I'm glad that he's following up on that work and trying to get that established for this year. We reviewed the potential of ethnic studies, kind of went as far as looking at the timeline. I know it's something that we've talked about here at the district. And I think we all agree it's a needed course. I think the update that Principal Cinto gave us was I guess it has passed. It will be a requirement, but the only downside of that is it's not going to be until 2029. So it has a lot to do with the curriculum and what will be approved and all that. So it's basically not going to be a requirement until 2029. He talked a little bit about that. Obviously his staff has discussed offering it as an elective, but they just feel that it should be a requirement that all students receive it. So he did mention a teacher. I think he said Mr. Musina. Yeah, that he's taken initiative to kind of augment his course teachings and to include topics around ethnic studies, such as I think he mentioned identity, privilege, oppression, racism. And so obviously if there's opportunity for that, I think I want to thank those teachers that are looking at doing that as well. As far as the social justice piece, we talked a little bit more about the goal as far as with the youth engagement and finding ways of connecting the district and giving opportunities to students, the student voice, and how we can kind of collaborate with the city and continue to do that work in that realm. And obviously the example of the Lcap, that's I think something that highlights some of that work, because those questions were all related around racism and social justice. And I wanted to take a second just to thank those students as well. We were invited as the equity committee to be on that call, and I know it's a hard topic to talk about, and just the fact that these kids, as Jeannie mentioned, were able to express themselves and share their experiences. I think it's very powerful, and it's very inspiring for me to see our youth, and especially at our district, that are being able to speak up. So I think that's it. Forrest, if you have anything to add.
I just wanted to add that a lot of this is dovetailing off of that petition that was signed last year. I fully admit I wasn't really here for that, but I just thought it was important to make sure everybody knew that they were heard.
Okay, thank you. And then we're moving on to curriculum, technology, and innovation, and that would be Jeannie and Forrest.
And I'll go ahead and report on that. And if there's anything I missed, please let me know, okay? So the Curriculum, Technology, and Innovation Committee was on February 2nd, and we started the meeting with a technology update. Dr. Wilson reviewed and district administration reviewed what our learning management systems are, and the learning management systems are the Power School at the high school, Google Classroom at RLS in the elementary school, Google, and then Csea is at the primary school and elementary school, and then the Promethean boards at the primary school. And then we also, Dr. Wilson also went over the paper tutoring system as well, just to kind of give everyone an idea, kind of what we're using as our learning systems. Peg Maddox of Napa Learns, she shared with us the information about the Virtual Career Academy, and that's something that Napa Learns has put together this last year, and it includes not only just high school students, but also folks in the community. Right now, she said in the past 50% of those that were part of the program, 50% of them are high school students, and 77% of it is a pass. So they're doing really well. And then with that, it's like a certificate, and they're able to get into entry-level jobs. So it's really advantageous for our students for that, and certainly in our community as well. Dr. Wilson then gave us an update about the Governor Newsom's Safe School, the Safe School update. So there was a lot more kind of a review type of a meeting that year, but it was just great to see that our learning platforms are working, and I know that there is opportunity for our teaching staff to be able to state how they're feeling about it as well, and whether we should make any kind of changes. Is there anything else that you'd like to add? No, great. Thank you. Thank you for being at that meeting too. All right. Thank you.
And then we have our Wellness Committee. Was Lisa and Forrest?
We welcomed Trustee Minter onto that committee this time. From a housekeeping standard on this committee, the remaining issues on that is the Wellness Committee goals that we have to continue to work on 2021. The topics, there's other things to talk about, so we work on it, gets put onto another agenda, but it's continuing to be on the agendas going forward. We also have to do an assessment on the wellness policy, and again, that is ongoing, and we'll revisit that on our next committee. As usually what happens on the Wellness Committee, the theme continues to be social emotional health for both our staff and our students, for the obvious reasons of what's been going on the past year. We heard from our counselors for both RLS and the primary elementary, and from Mary Allen, who, were telling us all the things that are going on and what they're doing to work with the kids. That at the RLS level, Terry O'Leary reports that students are doing better overall. They're happier, their grades are better, the behaviors are better. The number of referrals are about the same, but so that's not a cause for concern or anything, because it's just kind of staying the course. Dana Sabin reported that, they found a little uptick at the, primary elementary, nothing again of concern. And again, now that the kids are back in and connecting, it could just be a result of that. But, they do the mindfulness at the primary school now. And staff uses that as a wellness time as well. So we continue to be very lucky to have staff who are making this a priority for our students across all levels. Mary Allen reported on the Healthy Kids survey that will start on February 22nd. Questions this time will also include learning from home, and that is given to grades 5, 7, 9, and 11 as a reminder. And, we just to be aware that we have so many entities in our valley that are serving our students, not just St. Helena Unified, but we have like the Up Valley Family Center. And Zach reported that there was currently 33 to 35 tutors have already been connected to students. They have 33 to 35 tutors available, and they've already, they're continuing connected. They've connected with 4 students already, and everybody's looking out for our kids as best they can. So we're very, very lucky. Forrest, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Just that we discussed strategies for physical education, like exercise and things like that, especially in the context of social distancing and COVID needs.
Thank you.
Okay, and then I will report on the Monrovia group. We met this morning, and it was a reiteration of the great job that St. Helena Hospital has done. Vaccinations Up Valley are so successful, primarily due to the work at the St. Helena Hospital, and it's been a model for other areas in the county. My second little point, shout out, will be that the Chamber is going to be putting on some leadership training programs in the next few months, and those sound really exciting. And those programs will be sent out to staff at the school if they wish to participate. Am I correct in that, Mary Lou? Yes. And then the last little item, well, it's not a little item, it's a big item, that was discussed is that there is going to be some road work on Grayson Avenue, and there is discussion of a bike lane that may impact parking. And that is being discussed with our administrative staff and the city, and we're working in collaboration to make the decisions that are best for the community on that. And that is it. So for our subcommittees. We've it seems like we had a lot to report on. We haven't usually had that many meetings. So, and then I would like to say that the SHTA report to the board is Brandon here? Yes, there. Hello, Brandon. Are you ready?
I am.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for having me again. Just my report is going to, first off, highlight a couple of things that have already been mentioned. I know we were part of the thank you that Mr. Heller reported to the Hospital Foundation, but it sure feels like I should thank them in a verbal way as well. Our faculty is going to be fully vaccinated after tomorrow, and we're just so appreciative of the efforts that everybody's been able to get that process to completion. Really what I'm most excited about is that many of the meetings and many of the discussions that we're having, whether I'm talking with Mr. Heller or whether I'm talking with Dr. Wilson or whether I'm talking with my own membership, we're really kind of starting to kind of veer away from, how we manage all of this to looking at, some routine items into 21-22. Certainly learning loss is not going to be routine, but it's nice to talk about what we're going to be able to do in the summer. Vertical articulation is going to be focused. It wasn't tonight like it was supposed to be, but the staff is looking forward to participating in that next week to highlight some of the areas that the staff feels will be important with learning loss. We feel appreciative to be a part of that process. And really some of the Lcap meetings have focused on student panels where we're not completely focused on the COVID situation. We're looking at different ways to help kids again. It just kind of feels a little bit more normal through the school year, and I think that goes to just what Joe was saying and what some of the other reports have been saying as well. A couple of things that I wanted to mention that some of my members are doing to help in the wellness area. I know that Miss Vicky and Mr. Pauls are producing basketball and volleyball clinics at their school sites on A days, I believe. It was approved through Mrs. Cox. I really appreciate that. The kids are really enjoying those clinics, and that helps people get active for sure. Sports are actually starting, and we hope to have some contests coming up soon. And we have 4, maybe 5 members that are coaching at the high school level that are excited about being out there with the kids, doing things. I have 2 members on coaching JV softball that are really excited about being with the girls out there, participating in activities that are outdoors. That also doesn't go without notice, some of the not off-campus coaches that are coaching out some of the sports and swimming, golf, tennis, and so forth. So I'm really happy that Mr. Hoppy has taken the time to help us get through this process of getting started. And now we're hoping for some contests and some games, depending on what the guidelines allow us to do. And then finally, we've been doing mini fellowship meetings with Mr. Heller. We have one tomorrow. And that just gives us another opportunity to sit down and just talk about how things are going, what's been happening the last few weeks in terms of our site leadership. Our site reps participate in that, and those have started out really positively. We have our whole site and district administration fellowship meetings next week starting, and those will be half-hour meetings, towards the end of the day, so that members can, also have their voice. So things are starting to look a little bit more normal, as much as we possibly can. And there's lots of planning starting to happen for next school year, which who knows what that will look like, but it just feels good to start talking about those types of things. And that's my report. Thank you. And we will see you next month.
Thank you, Mr. Farrell. And the Csea report is written, and we are on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Wilson.
Thank you and good evening. In alignment with some of what Mr. Farrell shared, kindergarten, transitional kindergarten enrollment will be opening on February 22nd for all families who reside in our attendance area. We encourage our families to enroll between that window of February 22nd and April 15th. It allows us to plan and prepare for those new little ones who will be joining our school district. So application packets can be found online or at the primary school office. We do have a board study session next week on February 25th at 4:30. That is highlighting two areas of importance for the school district. We'll be talking about the budget, and we'll also be talking about enrollment options. And members of the public can participate via Zoom. I think I already heard somebody mention the virtual town hall. The Local Control Accountability Plan, the Lcap, is the document that drives who we are and what we do and how we move forward to serve students in all areas. And the virtual town hall is a process that we will use this year to listen to the voices of students, employees, parents, and community members. So it'll be a very large webinar, and members of that are participating will be placed in and out of breakout sessions so that they can have conversations about some questions that will be posted in the invitation when that becomes available. We are asking participants to RSVP so that, again, we can be planned and prepared for any that are planning on joining us. We're looking for quite a few people to join us. And then finally, I did want to mention to the governing board and update the community on district of choice and enrollment caps. This is a new chart that you have not seen before. If you take a look at the left-hand side, those are the adopted enrollment caps for this year. And you'll recall earlier in the year, I recommended that we lower those caps for a number of reasons. And Ms. Madrigal on the 9th of February did a census of current enrollment to allow us to understand where we are and where we may be going as the year progresses. Now remember, we don't know how many transitional kindergartners or kindergartners we will have. So that is the, noted there are the dates for the enrollment window opening. And then as you look at each grade level, you'll see the cap and then the number of students that we currently have. Meaning, if we were later on in the school year and it was time to invite DOC, District of Choice students in, you can see that there are a few grade levels where we do have some room. The asterisk next to 9th grade, if you go down to the bottom of the chart, that helps us to know the number of students we have coming from RLS, and then the projected number of students that we have coming to us from Howell Mountain and Pope Valley. So that's where those numbers are coming from. So I just would offer to answer any questions any board members might have at this time. The actual census is much later in the school year, and enrollment could change at that time. It's our intention at this point to update you on a monthly basis. And so if you have any questions, please. And that would conclude my report.
Any questions from the board? I just have one. I know sometimes we do receive students from private schools that are either the Foothills Elementary or the Montessori school. So in RLS, I mean in 9th grade. I'm sorry.
That does happen, and at this time, I do not have that data. Perhaps we'll have that for the next month.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, I would like to highlight that the 4 reports from our principals at each school are really wonderful reports that a lot of effort is put into, and I would like to invite all of our community members that are watching or listening to this meeting right now, read those reports online. Those are written reports. And at this time, we are going to take a short break until 7:15, and we'll return with the consent agenda on item number 9. agenda. Item 9. The consent agenda contains routine items judged as appropriate to be acted upon in one motion. If a board member requests that an item be removed from the consent agenda, the item will be considered under discussion action items. Is there anyone present via Zoom who wishes to publicly comment on this agenda item? Erica?
There's no public comment?
Were there any written comments submitted by members of the public?
No.
Do trustees have any questions regarding this agenda item?
No.
No?
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda item, consent agenda as presented?
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carried. Item 10A, update in-person instruction. I'd like to call on Dr. Mary Lou Wilson.
Yes, good evening again. You know, as Brandon Farrell mentioned earlier, we are focusing more of our time on routine items and less time on COVID-19. This report will be fairly brief in comparison to months in the past. As far as the county goes, if you have been paying attention to the newspaper or listening in on any of Dr. Reluccio's reports, the counts for COVID positive have been on the steady decline, which is exciting and important for all of us to know. We still are slated to be in the purple tier, although if everything continues as it has in the last couple of weeks, sometime within the next few weeks, maybe as soon as mid-March, we could move into the red tier. Doesn't really impact the school district because we've continued to operate in the purple tier. It will impact businesses with potential in-person dining and whatnot. The real focus has been on vaccinations across the county, and as a matter of time, the vaccinations are going to turn over to myturn.org, which is a way that you register for vaccinations, and will be no longer facilitated through the county. That will be a statewide change. And then, as Trustee Kerr mentioned, with regards to the state-required updates, the COVID prevention plan and checklist are completed, have been approved, and posted on the district website. And just a thank you to Andy Stubbs, who took on that role. And it was mentioned in one of my meetings that our paperwork was a model for other districts. So thank you to Andy for that work. Mr. Heller, an update on instruction and human resources?
Yes. In thinking about the presentation done last month on learning loss, we are continuing to administer the measures of academic progress map at all sites to continue to collect data on student progress and potential gaps that we'll need to address. As well as I thought it would be interesting to take a snapshot of January attendance for the board and the community, and you could see that our attendance is very strong and robust. Our students are attending school and engaging with the learning, which is great. Just a quick update on athletics. This occurred about 2 weeks ago, where the North Coast section allowed our league, the Coastal Mountain Conference, to choose and reopen sports. And so the Coastal Mountain Conference decided to go with our spring sports season, as most of those sports are outside and have less impact and contact than most other sports. And you could see that in the purple tier, we can offer those 5 sports: cross country, track, tennis, golf, swimming, and diving. And as we move into the red tier, baseball and softball can begin to engage in competition. I'd also like to add that FFA, Future Farmers of America, are working with our ag program to begin bringing animals back on campus. So that's an additional bonus as well. And then just a reoccurring theme is our COVID-19 testing. We are providing testing for our staff still. We do recognize that with the vaccine administration that our numbers may begin to dwindle. So we have been offering it every Thursday and averaging somewhere between 20 and 25 employees, but today we had 15. So we may be moving to a different model of once every 2 weeks for those administrations. So that's all from my end, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Stubbs.
Thank you. We will be receiving some additional financial resources to support COVID-19 through the federal and state governments, and I'll be talking more about those different resources during our second interim report, which will be presented to the board on March 11th. One of the resources that we're receiving currently is some additional food services funding, the supplemental meal reimbursement, and that's in the amount of 75 cents per breakfast and per lunch. But for the period between March 13th, 2020 and August 2020. And then finally, we've mentioned the updated guidelines provided by the California Department of Public Health, which were most recently released on January 14th. We've been reviewing those very carefully with the maintenance team and then updating our inspection checklists and so forth, and we're planning to do some walkthroughs and check to ensure that things like disinfecting spray has been replaced with cleaning spray in student areas, and those kinds of sort of refinements that we have to work with now.
And as far as next steps go, as a school community, we'll continue to adhere and monitor all of the public health guidelines. And at this time, we'll take any questions or comments.
Erica, is there any public comment on this agenda item?
If members of the public care to comment on this item, please hover towards the bottom of your screen and raise your virtual hand. There is no public comment.
Was there any public comment submitted?
No, there was no public comment submitted.
Thank you. Trustees, any comments or questions?
One just clarifying question, just because I hear it out in the community quite a bit. Dr. Wilson, if we do move into a red tier, that does not extend our school day for any of our campuses, correct?
Correct. So Mr. Heller worked diligently with the administrative team and the bargaining units to develop a schedule that would allow us to lower our class size. So, for example, at the primary and the elementary school, as Mr. Olguin mentioned earlier tonight, our specialists, our Spanish teacher, our music teacher, they have a classroom this year. And in order for us to extend the primary or the elementary, we would need them seeing students in that specials pull-out to allow for the preparation time that typically is embedded in the school day for our teachers. Currently, their prep time is now right before school and then after the students leave. At the middle school and the high school, our teachers and staff developed a schedule that increased the day by another period. So there's 4 periods on A day and 4 periods on A day, so and on B day. So our teachers actually have another section than what they had taught typically. So to undo all the complexity of the schedules, along with the complexity of the food services, it is not part of our plan this year. And in fact, if you go way back to the months where we were introducing the schedules, I did say to you that we would need to stay within this schedule for the remainder of this school year. And then depending on what happens in the months to come, we'll be seeking guidance from Dr. Reluccio and the Public Health Department to determine what happens in August.
Thank you for again.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you for the report.
President Haug?
Oh.
I think that,
Oh, sorry.
It's more of a
sorry.
comment.
Yes.
It was just highlighting the work out. I know Andy had the majority of the prevention program plan. I think it's a great document. It's a long document. I think for community and parents, I mean, we get kind of as parents the surface level of what's happening at the schools, and you can semi see what's happening. But this goes through like every scenario in there and things that the district has obviously taken their time and expertise and have collaborated with different agencies to make this a success. So I think I encourage community to look at that, to just really understand that we are well prepared and that we've thought of most everything on that could happen. And so I want to just thank Andy and the entire team for putting that together and working on those stressful scenarios.
Thank you. And thank you, Andy, and everyone else that worked on the team. On to item 10B. That's review of progress on the learning continuity and attendance plan. That's the Lcap update, and I would like to call on Mr. Heller.
Great, thank you. And so tonight, the presentation on the learning continuity and attendance plan is actually an update on the progress made within the plan itself. And so as we take a look at the slides, we are going to take a look at our progress in the 8 areas identified within the learning continuity and attendance plan. And just stalling. And then, so as the board knows, the local control accountability plan was delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and the Senate Bill 98 established the LCP for this school year. And what we're going to do tonight in concert with Mary Allen and myself is just take a look at the 8 areas, as I mentioned, that we identified in the LCP, and see what our progress is within those areas. So we highlighted 3 main topics within each of those. So the next slide is on stakeholder engagement, and we've really tried to make an effort to include our PTG in the progress that we are making on our transition team, to include the parents so they can get information out to the community, as well as using a survey to collect their thoughts, and we've shared that with the board on distance learning and return to school options. Obviously, the bulk of our work in the stakeholders is engaging our bargaining units. So again, as I've mentioned at a number of times, and we've talked about, this whole system really it was dependent on their willingness to come back and provide for our students, and so we want to recognize again SHTA and Csea for their work. The next slide is on in-person instructional offerings. We've talked about this at several times. We started with special education cohorts in August to get students on campus with our most vulnerable populations, and then with the return to full in-person instruction in November. Again, Dr. Wilson mentioned earlier, it's a very complex system that involves food service, early release, staff development, prep time, and so to undo these schedules would be very difficult to do. So it is a system that we have developed to provide the maximum opportunities for our students while they're in person for the rest of this school year. And so the distance learning, not much really more needs to be said. We're all aware that we've been using Zoom and Google Meet to serve students, that we've also had Fuel and Apex as an option for third-party education for students that at no point during the school year wanted to return to campus due to the pandemic. And just the ability for our teachers to develop synchronous and asynchronous learning opportunities for students. We've had plans to at times invoke the asynchronous that haven't come to fruition, but it's always nice to have that in our back pocket now. So I think within our distance learning program and in our in-person learning, our educational system has really advanced in a lot of ways just by force in the last year. If you think back to where we were at March 13th last year when we closed our in-person instruction and went to that remote model, from where we were on that day to where we are now, there's been so much advancement and so much growth that I think we need to take a second and recognize that within all of our staff. And then access to device and connectivity. We're very fortunate that our students do have the one-to-one ability that was pre-existing prior to the pandemic, so they did already have access to devices that would connect them to their curriculum. Some of the challenges we experienced were not everyone had Wi-Fi connectivity or access, and then thanks to our technology team and led by Andy, the distribution of the hotspots occurred very quickly and provided support for all of our families in need. So super commendations to Andy and the technology team for getting that done in a timely manner to keep students connected. And then we also had a point person established in our library media specialists because they were the point people to troubleshoot, and you know, they took on that responsibility to make sure that students stayed connected. And so having that plan, I guess we would call it now, the plan, but as it developed to really make sure that students stayed connected through their devices, through their connectivity, so we could continue to do our distance learning while it occurred. All right, and so I'll turn the next 4 slides over to Mary. And I hope she's out there. Mary?
There we go. Thank you. Good evening, board members and school personnel and public. Slide number 8 deals with pupil participation and progress. And this mainly started out at the beginning of the school year with distance learning. And the main focus of this was to make sure that we had students engaged in our distance learning program. That if a student was not connecting with a teacher in a live session online, what we were going to do about it. And so we designated a re-engagement person at each site. And then we also changed our truancy process, that our first couple of letters that went out were just more of, hey, we miss you, what's going on, can we help you, how can we support you? So we really put a concerted effort, and we still are, with pupil participation and progress. Even though we're in person, we do have some students that are still on the distance learning model, and we are constantly trying to keep them engaged and keep them motivated because there is a difference between distance and in person. Next slide. This is good. So the next slide deals with pupil learning loss, and Brandon actually referenced this. We're truly focused, and we've talked about this at our last board meeting, that for reading and English language arts, we're seeing steady numbers there. We're concerned, but we're not terribly concerned on that front, because that seems to be even with what we're seeing with our measures. What we're concerned about is looking at math loss and some other loss that might have occurred while we were in the distance learning model. And so, as Brandon alluded to, next week the teachers will be discussing what are some possible options that we can do during the summertime. We certainly had a winter intersession, and there was a report to the board on that. So we are constantly going to be focused on how can we support our students, how can we fill those gaps that might have been present during this whole COVID-19 pandemic. Next. Mental health and social emotional, we've done a couple of board reports and we focus on this. What I'm excited about is that we have 4 therapists that have been doing a great job, and 2 of those therapists are bilingual. So we have been providing mental health therapy in a virtual format and now in person since we went out in March 13th last year. So our mental health folks, I can't say enough about them. They do a great job. And our referral system with our counselors and our behaviorists within the school sites themselves do a great job with identifying students that might need some additional support. And we also are focusing on the social emotional learning within all of our school sites, because we know it's the whole child. We're not just focused on the academics. We're focused on making sure our students have been through a lot of trauma this year and over the past years, and just really making sure we're taking care of that emotional side of a student. And then school nutrition, I don't know what more I can say here. They have done a fantastic job, and this has been stated over and over again. ever since we went out in March, they have provided food service nonstop with no interruptions. Right now that we're in person, we're still there's providing universal breakfast and a grab-and-go lunch. If we had a family that could not get here for our food pickup, then we made deliveries to the home, just on and above. Kudos to all of them, all the way through. And then Chris is going to close it up with what's next.
Yeah. And so the governing board will see in the coming months a review of the Lcap from 2019-20. So that's, you know, the previous year when we closed out the first 3 years of the Lcap. We'll have an annual update for the board to review and approve, as well as an annual update on the LCP from this year to review and approve. All of this is still working towards the development of the new Lcap, which will be brought to the board for a public review in May and approval in June for the next 3 years. And within there, we still need to hear from our stakeholders. We still need to conduct our community events. So there may be some new changes or requests. We may have additional staffing recommendations. We may have a request for increased funding for student services or other related things that we will address within the budget as well. So that's kind of what's on the forefront and coming up and where we are and where we're headed with the Lcap development for the next 3 years. Be happy to answer any questions at this point.
So is there any public comment on this agenda item, or was there public comment submitted?
No, there is no public comment.
Trustees, questions or comments?
Yeah, just a quick question, just to re-clarify. So with the Lcap, the 21-24, it's obviously already in process of being formulated by the committee. And you said any additional changes would maybe come about through like the opportunity, like a town hall, right? So something comes about.
Yeah,
that.
I mean, go ahead, I'm sorry.
That would be an opportunity for like the community that maybe isn't on the Lcap committee to bring up certain things that maybe they want to see in the Lcap.
Exactly. Yeah, the Lcap committee does help us kind of drive where we are and where we're headed, and developing the community forum. But we may hear some things within that community forum that are threads that are common and could move the direction of some of our actions and services in a different way and require potentially additional funding to support that. So those recommendations would be forthcoming.
I've got a quick question. It's and if you don't know the answer to this, that's fine. It's just something I just thought of. Is there any discussion on it out in government entities to reduce the number of years in the future Lcap? From 3 to 2 or anything, just because of the circumstances? Or have you heard anything of that?
I have not heard that. Mary Allen does attend state and federal meetings in Sacramento. Mary, could you potentially answer that with anything you might have heard?
Yeah, there's been no discussion on cutting it back from 3 years to 2 or 1.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions? I do want to just highlight, we're looking at, you reported out on the connectivity and what we've done for our students. And I just want to remind everyone that we also did that connectivity and reaching out to all of our families and our students during 2 fires and power shutoffs. And we were able to manage through all of the challenges that our district has faced that other districts, frankly, have not faced. And we've still come through. So on to item 10C. It is a written report on the winter session, and I know this is a written report, and I want to thank Chris and Mary Ellen for putting it together. Really impressive. Thank you. Thank you for what you did, and thank you to all the staff that that helped our students throughout this time. Is there any public comment on this agenda item?
There is no public comment.
Trustees, questions or comments?
I just was very appreciative to read those the reflections, and I so appreciate the staff giving that extra time. That was really great.
Okay, thank you again, staff. Next, we are on to item 10D, consideration of adoption of the TK5 science curriculum. And I would like to call on Mr. Heller.
I believe Mary Ellen will.
Oh, I'm sorry. It is Mary Ellen. I was waiting for my screen to update. Sorry, Mary. Can you go ahead, please?
No, it's absolutely okay. This is, I brought this to the board last month in reference to putting up for recommendation of adopting the new science curriculum for the TK5 level. It's been on 30-day review. We've had no comment, so we're now bringing it back to the board for final approval so we can adopt the new science curriculum TK5.
Is there any public comment, or was there any public comment submitted on this agenda item?
There is no public comment.
Trustees, questions or comments?
No.
I do want to say that on my recent visit to the elementary school, I was actually able to see Ashley Wright's class working with the new curriculum, and I just want to thank all of our teachers again for piloting the curriculum. I know that, and giving the feedback, I know that that's takes a while to give thoughtful reflections on the curriculum, and it's a lot of work. And I want to take it's time now to thank all of our teachers who participated in the feedback and evaluation of the curriculum. Is there a motion to approve the adoption of the TK5 science curriculum as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Joe, would you like to cast a preferential vote?
I apologize. Do we not need a second on the motion first, or?
We actually have it in this order. I think that this.
Perfect.
Is this the order that we're supposed to be doing it, Mary? Yes, this is the correct order, Joe.
Aye.
Is there a second?
I will second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carried. So this is how we will be conducting the votes in the future. Even though it does seem a little backwards, you'll be conducting your preferential vote after the
Perfect.
first motion.
Thank you.
On to item 11A, Human Resources. Review and consideration of approval of the Transportation Program job description for the Transportation Assistant. I'd like to call on Miss Andy Stubbs.
Thank you. And the next 4 items all have to do with our 2021-22 transportation program. During the January 21st board meeting, the board approved a transportation plan and budget for 21-22. And that plan and budget included 3 new positions. And so the first 3 items are for the job descriptions for those positions. And each of these job descriptions has been vetted by Csea and approved by their regional office through their 610 process. And then they are currently being reviewed for approval by our own Csea unit number 287. And so pending approval of these 3 job descriptions by the board and by Csea, we would then go ahead and post and hire as soon as we could so we can ensure that they were trained and ready to go for next year. And in addition, if they are hired prior to the start of the school year, we can replace Michael's drivers without penalty with those new district drivers. So that would produce a cost savings for this year. And so item 11A is the job description for the transportation assistant and driver. And so this would be an 8-hour position, and this person would take over the dispatch duties, some of the day-to-day operational tasks of transportation, and then they would also be able to function as a substitute driver for short-term needs. And so I would ask the board to consider approving the job description for the transportation assistant driver.
Is there any public comment on this agenda item, or is there any public comment submitted?
There is no public comment.
Trustees, any questions or comments?
No.
Is there a motion to approve the transportation assistant job as job description as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. On to item 11B. It will be review and consideration of approval of the transportation program job description for a school bus driver. Andy?
Thank you. And for this job description, we would be looking at hiring 3 part-time positions, 6 hours each. And so I would recommend the board approve the school bus driver job description.
Is there anyone present or who wishes to publicly comment on this agenda item, or is there any public comment submitted?
There is no public comment.
Trustees, comments or questions?
No.
Is there a motion to approve the school bus driver job description as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carried. And then we have item 11C, review and consideration of approval for the transportation program job description for a district driver for a van. Again, Ms. Andy Stubbs.
Thank you. And this position differs a little bit in that this driver would not be qualified to drive a school bus. Rather, they would be driving district vans for the purpose of transporting students to non-public school placements as needed. And then if we have this position in place, we can relieve our contract with Adroit, which we have in place currently for that type of service. And so we would hire these positions as needed when we had students that were participating in non-public school placements. I'm anticipating 2 for next year.
Is there anyone present who wishes to publicly comment on this agenda item, or was there public comment submitted?
There is no public comment.
Trustees, comments or questions? Is there a motion to approve the district van driver job description as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Item 11D, review and consider approval of a memorandum of understanding between SHUSD and the California School Employees Association Csea number 287 regarding transportation. Again, I'd like to call in Mrs. Andy Stubbs.
Thank you. This is the final piece related to the transportation program. When a district takes on a transportation program and its own drivers, there are a lot of unique elements to that job around working conditions, hours, route assignments, and so forth. And so this would be an MOU that we've negotiated with Csea that outlines all of those details. This MOU also has gone through the 610 process with the regional Csea bargaining unit and is currently being reviewed by our own Csea bargaining unit. And so I would recommend approval of this MOU.
Is there anyone present who wishes to publicly comment on this agenda item? And is there any public comment submitted?
There is no public comment.
Trustees, comments or questions?
I'll go ahead and comment now after those three approvals. Just congratulations on this. I know we were talking about this, I think, last year, and just putting together the whole transportation department. I know it takes a lot of work, and obviously there's been other priorities in the district, and so being able to accomplish that, I think is a great work that you've done. So appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Elgin. Is there a motion to approve the MOU between SHUSD and Csea regarding transportation as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carried. Next, we're on to item 12A, business operations, review and consideration of approval of contracts over $25,000 for February 2021. Ms. Sandy Stubbs.
Thank you. We just have one contract this evening with Discovery Education, and this ties to agenda item 10D, which is consideration of adoption of the TK5 science curriculum that Chris and Mary Allen presented. And so this would be the contract for the purchasing of those materials. And we do have adequate budget in current year to purchase them all in current year for next year. And so I would recommend that the board approve the purchase order agreement with Discovery Education.
Is there any public comment, or is there public comment submitted on this agenda item?
There is no public comment.
Trustees, comments or questions? Is there a motion to approve the contracts over $25,000 as presented?
I'll make the motion to approve the contracts over 25,000.
Joe, would you like to cast a preferential vote?
Aye.
Is there a second?
I will second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carried. Next, we have item 13A, is the approval of the 2021 CSBA Delegate Assembly Candidate nomination for Region 3B. I would like to call on Dr. Wilson.
Yes, thank you. CSBA is the California School Boards Association. That is the governing body that supports and assists you as a school board to serve the school district effectively. And over the course of my tenure with you, Indira Lopez, who is a board member in Calistoga, served as the Delegate Assembly member for this region. So first, a huge thank you to the years of service that she provided for the entire county with regards to the Delegate Assembly. At this time, we, as a county, need a new Delegate Assembly representative. And there were, I believe due to the pandemic, there were delays in notifications to the school districts with regards to the nomination form and the next steps. And so at this time, we don't have a ballot with an actual name on it because that didn't happen. What we do have are two candidates who have completed what is considered a write-in. So they both are writing their names in. Jeannie Kerr, a member of our school board, and David Gracia, a member of Napa Unified School Board. So at this time, as a governing board, it would be appropriate for you to discuss and deliberate and identify potentially one of those candidates that you would appoint as the write-in candidate for St. Helena Unified School District. And then please understand that all of the other school districts, along with the County Office of Education, are conducting the same process, and collectively the 6 boards would then be determining who would be the delegate assembly for the county. Happy to answer any questions, and recommend that you move forward with discussion and potential recommendation.
Ms. Madrigal, is there any public comment on this agenda item?
There is no public comment.
Was there any public comment submitted? No.
No comments were submitted.
Thank you. Trustees, would you like to discuss? Jeannie, I'm really glad that you put your name forward. Thank you. Thank you for your service. Would anyone else like to make any comments or questions?
I'll go. Yeah. Again, I just want to thank Indira Lopez for representing our region for the last several years, and then just thanking both candidates for stepping up kind of on a short notice to fill this important role. I personally would like to nominate Jeannie Kerr. She's done so much for our community outside of being a trustee. Just reading through her bio was incredible, just to see how dedicated she is to our community and more so to our students. I work closely with her through St. Leon Preschool for All, so again, really value her input, her dedication, and her passion to the education system, starting at the preschool level. And so I know she will do an excellent job, and I'd be honored if she represented our board and the entire region.
Well, yes, Julio kind of reiterate. I mean, he stated a lot of the things. Also, much gratitude to Ms. Lopez for her years of service. And again, it's always great to see more than one name when things that just because the interest is there, the commitment is there, and that's a great thing to see. So I would like to thank both of you for putting your names forward as well. Having known you both in this role and other roles in the community as well, I wholeheartedly support that nomination for your name as a write-in. I know you would serve your constituents and your valley and your region proudly. So thank you for putting your name in.
Forrest, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I'd also like to nominate Jeannie. I haven't known her very long, and I've also never met Mr. Garcia, but I have full faith that she would be a great delegate.
And Jeannie, I would also like to just say I've been with you on the board for over 8 years now, and it's just been a joy to serve with you. You've always helped me when I needed advice. You've always participated wholeheartedly in CSBA events and seminars. I've always enjoyed going to seminars with you and training. And if I may read a little excerpt from your answers to questions regarding the nomination out loud, I just feel, and it was something that you spoke to me about in our phone call, and I just think that it sums you up perfectly when you quoted, "Volunteering is the ultimate exercise in democracy. You vote in elections once a year, but when you volunteer, you vote every day about the kind of community you want to live in." And I think that everyone knows how much you've done for our community, and I just feel that you would be a great representative for our county at CSBA. So I think we have several nominations. We have 4 nominations for Jeannie. So our ballot, how do we go forward with this now?
You're going to ask for a motion.
We're going to do a motion.
Yes, you are.
And so the motion will be to put the write-in candidate name of Jeannie Kerr on the ballot for St. Helena Unified School District. Okay. And so is there a motion to approve the nomination of Jeannie Kerr as CSBA Delegate Assembly candidate for Region 3B as presented?
I'll make that motion to approve.
Joe, would you like to cast a preferential vote?
Aye.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carried. Thank you, Jeannie. Thank you for submitting your name.
Oh, you're welcome, and thank you. I just wanted to be quite honest with you. I'm not used to all the attention, so so thank you, and I'm a little bit humbled by it all. Thank you.
So next we're on to item 13B, request to accept gifts, donations, and earmarked funds. I would like to call on, is it okay if I call on you, Lisa, to read the
Certainly.
list?
Yes.
I didn't give you a heads up beforehand, but it's not a very long list tonight.
That's okay. I'd be honored to read this. This is the good stuff. Okay, so let's see here. The St. Helena, on behalf of the St. Helena School District and the Board of Trustees, we would like to acknowledge and thank with much gratitude the following donations that have been received. St. Helena High School has received the following donations totaling $6,885.82. That is a combination of $350 from Maria Haug for the 2020 Keith Bowers Memorial Scholarship, $1,000 from St. Helena Viticulture Club / Appellation St. Helena for 2020 Appellation St. Helena Scholarship, $5,000 from the Alice Rea Living Trust for 2021 Dr. Mark and Jerry Rea Memorial Scholarship, $535.82 of student project materials and supplies from Central Valley Builders. Again, thank you to all of our donors for your generosity.
Is there anyone present who wishes to publicly comment on this agenda item?
There is no public comment.
Trustees, any comments or questions? Is there a motion to approve the request to accept gifts, donations, and earmarked funds as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Joe, would you like to cast a preferential vote?
Aye.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. We are on to item 13C, review and consider approval of board policy updates, and there are a lot of them. I would like to call on Dr. Mary Lou Wilson.
Yes, there are quite a few board policy updates, and the committee did meet recently on February 5th. Two of our board members participated, Trustee Pelosi and Trustee Olguin. Many of the updates are routine in nature and follow updates to Ed Code and new regulations. There were a couple that collectively the committee felt were important and a little bit different, and we ask that some information be shared about those. The first one would be Board Policy 5144.1, suspension and expulsion in due process. And then we'll go to Board Policy 6145, extracurricular and co-curricular activities. And finally, Board Policy 6146.1, high school graduation requirements. Ms. Allen, I think you are first. And I'm thinking that I circled suspension, and it's actually supposed to be suicide prevention. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's suicide prevention.
Thank
so
you.
That's 5141.52.
There we go. Ms. Allen?
Yeah, you caught me off guard a little bit. Yes. So I have the board policy for suicide prevention. We did have a policy for suicide prevention, and it was in 2009, and then we had modified our policy in 2017, and then CSBA, which is the California School Board Association, has modified that policy even further, and we are accepting this policy. And this is basically stating that since we're school personnel, we see the students a lot. We interact a lot, more than 6 to 8 hours a day. And so it's our position to really make sure that our staff are trained to recognize the signs of potential suicide and to make sure that we have a policy and a procedure in place to identify students and get them the help that they need. So this policy does that. It's staff development. It deals with instruction of students, It also focuses on making sure we have a referral system in place to handle students that might be thinking about suicide, and then making sure that we have a positive school culture, which includes school engagement, and then making sure we have a crisis intervention procedure. So all of this we have, and this just puts it into writing and it's updated. So we're accepting the suicide prevention as well as the administrative regulations that go with that.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Mr. Cinto, could you please report on extracurricular and co-curricular activities and high school graduation requirements?
Sure. Governor Newsom recently passed Assembly Bill 908, which went into effect in September of 2020, which basically gave the governing board of each school district the ability to adopt a policy that would allow a probationary period to exceed 1 semester in length. We've never really instituted a probationary period except for a couple of years ago. So that's where the evolution of this policy comes. A few years ago, we recognized the need to adopt a probationary period for incoming freshmen. So I worked with Athletic Director Hoppy, Mr. Farrell, and Mr. Heller, and we authored language around that, which we began implementing, I believe it was just a couple of years ago. That said, our current educational and mental health climate has necessitated further action and allowances on behalf of students. As you will see in the Board Policy Committee recommendations, the new probationary allowance seeks to increase student connectedness, which is a fundamental precursor to academic achievement by expanding it beyond freshmen to all students. Assuming the passage of this change in board policy, I'll be working with invested parties to ensure in practice that academics remains a priority, while at the same time recognizing the power of active participation with peers and guidance from other encouraging and motivating adults. And not just in athletics, in all co and extracurricular activities. With regards to graduation requirements, we, particularly Terry Linder and myself, we've been discussing this for many years now. As you'll see in the recommended board policy, we've cited the individual and systemic obstacles students face, all of which have been magnified by our current situation. Despite those obstacles, our graduation rate has remained very high. That said, we want to make it very clear that the aim of this alternate pathway, which is definitely different than our 250 graduation requirement, is not to lower the bar at all, but rather to take into consideration existing barriers coupled with the varied ambitions of our students that we are implored to support and nurture. So as you'll see in the board policy language, we have increased our CTE graduation requirement while reducing in other areas because it is our job to prepare students for careers as well. This is not a means to prevent dropouts, but it is to take into consideration extenuating circumstances and challenges faced by students. So there you have it.
Thank you, Mr. Cinto. Trustee Pelosi, Trustee Olguin, do you have any information to share or add from our Board Policy Committee meeting?
I'll just tag along a little bit with that last policy. I mean, and what kind of the discussion was about there. And yeah, I think Principal Cinto highlighted that not everyone is going to college, and we do. This is an alternate pathway, and so I think he made it very clear that it's about not necessarily lowering the bar, but identifying those students that do have those challenges and allowing them to graduate, because it does impact them if they don't have a high school diploma. He mentioned that they don't have access to financial aid, so just understanding that some students in particular that they would identify, they would be able to help them with their future career. So I think I was in support of it just because I understand that not everyone will go to college and everyone has different circumstances. So I think it's something that I support.
And I think a reason to commend and applaud this is, as I said in our committee meeting, is that this is, to me, an example of success for all students, because this is ensuring that our students, however they look, are allowed a pathway to graduate high school and enter out to the next field, level of work, wherever their path may take. So I really commend our staff for thinking about this to provide this for our students.
And so with the two board members' support, the committee does recommend approval of all of the board policies put before you. As a reminder, the board policies you are voting on, the ARs, the administrative regulations, are there for you as an information item. we're happy to entertain any questions at this time.
Is there any public comment on this agenda item, or was there public comment submitted on this agenda item?
There is no public comment.
Trustees, any comments or questions?
Just wondering what locus of control for 18-year-olds means.
Yeah, I could have probably worded that a little differently, but basically when we have a student who turns 18 years old and is in danger of not graduating, we are able to kind of transition them and help their facilitation to adult ed if that is the appropriate option for them. However, there's a number of students that, because they don't turn 18 to the summer of their senior year, that we are unable to assist them in that process in the event that they are unable to earn a regular high school diploma. And unfortunately, what ends up happening is they end up not following through. So basically, we're trying to say there is that we no longer have control of students once they leave us. So we'd rather be able to make an additional allowance when we have them within our midst.
Thank you.
And then I also have a question regarding this, and this is pretty specific. It says here the completion prior to grade 9 of algebra coursework that meets or exceeds state academic content standards shall satisfy the algebra coursework requirement, but shall not exempt a student from the requirement to complete 2 mathematics courses in the grades 9 through 12. This is more of a clarifying question. I'm assuming that still stands within the alternative pathway, 20 credits in math, including integrated 1 / algebra. Those 20 credits still need to be taken at the high school. Is that correct?
Correct.
Great, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Is there a motion to approve the board policy updates as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Joe, would you like to cast a preferential vote?
Aye.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. On to item 13D, the review and potential approval of the SHUSD Governance Handbook. And for anyone in our audience who has stayed with us the entire evening, thank you. And this is the most exciting part of the entire meeting. That is an attempt at humor. I apologize. So we did move this item to the end so that because this is directly related to the board, we wanted to make sure that all of our and the way the board functions, we wanted to make sure that all of our student-centered items were at the beginning of the meeting. So I would like to call on Dr. Mary Lou Wilson.
Yes, recently at previous board meetings and study session, the board discussed the governance handbook and, as usual, typically takes some time to look and make any recommended changes. So that board, at the last board meeting, 2 of the board members, Trustee Pelosi and President Haug, volunteered to work in a small committee with me to work through and wordsmith those recommended changes. In that meeting, actually, we did meet 2 different times. There were some edits and changes that were recommended at the dais that are reflected in this handbook. Also, at those 2 meetings, there were some additional recommended changes that potentially would be for you to discuss tonight. So I am going to go through each one of them because I think that it's important to make sure that everyone sees the changes, because this is the handbook that guides your work. So on the very first page, the effective date will be changed once the board has approved the handbook. And then if you look at the bottom of that first page, the way that we were able to code this for you is the red text is it represents items that had been discussed at the dais. And the purple text recommends suggested new items that were brought forward by the small committee for further discussion tonight. And then there's one yellow highlighted item, which actually has already been reviewed by the board policy committee and was part of the consensus tonight. So then if you go to the very next page, you see some red line, and that's simply an update of the table of contents. If you go to page 4, you see quite a bit of red. We discussed this at the dais. This is where we updated the vision and the mission statement and the board priorities, district goals. There is one place there where, while it was not discussed at the dais, the committee felt that it was a minor change in the second to the last paragraph, where they're recommending that the word might be replaced with may with regards to holding focus groups. Going then to page 7, there is in the middle of the section under Superintendent Evaluation, this is a new suggestion that in light of the recent work with regards to the superintendent's evaluation and the use of a facilitator, that the sentence, the board and superintendent may engage a facilitator for the evaluation process, the committee felt that that would memorialize and help share that story, the history of using a facilitator. And so that is new information. And then at the very bottom, under the office holder obligations, in red, you'll see that if you do not complete your Form 470 with the Elections Office by August 1st, there is a daily fine that's assessed, and that was information that was discussed at the dais. Okay, then if you go to page 10, this is purple information, so that means that it has not been discussed as a whole group. And if you look at section E, student board member, the title was voting, and the committee felt that moving that voting to the word participation was more comprehensive and better represented the section. And then in the second paragraph around our student board member, it stated that the student board member shall attend all public board meetings. And the committee felt that we needed to offer more flexibility, especially during times of finals and or other activities. And so their recommendation is that that shall be replaced with should. Moving then to page 13, there was some conversation around emails and when a board member is to respond to an email and when a board member doesn't respond to an email. And so staff did some research on etiquette with regards to whether you are the direct recipient or a CC recipient of an email. And so this language here would just help to guide and assist board members in knowing if it's their responsibility to respond to an email or not. Any questions so far? There's a lot, so I want to, okay, thank you. Moving then to page 14, the purple section at the very top, again, is to provide assistance and guidance to our board members in the event that they receive a complaint or a concern raised by a community member. This gives guidance to our board members on how to refer a community member to the uniform complaint process that's found on the district website. And then in red, this was discussed. There's a clarification on what non-public means with regards to personnel and confidential information. And so that was discussed at the dais. And then there was a very robust discussion about social media at the dais. And we did go through the legal position given to us by School and College Legal. And ultimately, we felt that the committee felt that much of what was in our handbook was already covering the recommendations by School and College. And they suggest that the ultimate addition would be that board members would not use their personal social media platform to speak as a board member. Moving on to page 15, with regards to expense reimbursement, clarification around the whole idea that expenses for hotels and airfares by board members should be charged to the district credit card and not a personal credit card. And that's in alignment with the updated travel guidelines that Ms. Stubbs put into place last year or the year before?
Year before.
Thank you. And then the section G, orienting a new board member. We did talk about that at the dais, and this information here really provides more details to ensure that a new board member receives appropriate, efficient, and adequate orientation in the role of being a board member. On page 16, this was the board bylaw that there was a recommendation that we add the clarification that a board member may be appointed by the board as in a selection process in the event of a resignation or an untimely opening seat. And so we did take this recommendation to the board policy committee, where the board policy committee agreed with that recommendation, and that was passed tonight. And then if you go a few pages back to page 25, there is some additions to the appendix which we had talked about. This is the new board member materials. This first one is that schedule that I recommended to the board during the summer around how to provide orientation for a board member. And I've been pleased to continue to provide these meetings with our new board member, Mr. Minter. And then the next couple of pages are the outline for orientation for potential candidates. And this was the webinar that Ms. Madrigal and I provided over the summer when we knew we were going to have at least one open seat. And then if you go a little bit further, there's a document that provides details about the district for new board members, new board member orientation, and I actually shared this with all board members, and many of you found that to be very helpful. So appreciation to Ms. Madrigal for putting that together for us. And then finally, this is not a change, it's just a note for all of you. The very last page is that signature page that once the governance handbook is completely approved, then we ask that each board member make a commitment to that governance handbook by signing in and submitting that to Ms. Madrigal. So again, the items in red were discussed, and I believe there was a consensus on them at the last meeting. The items in purple are brought forward to you by the small committee, Trustee Pelosi and President Haug. And I would open it up for any questions and conversation. And I will not make a recommendation because this is your handbook. And so you need to make that recommendation.
Is there any public comment on this agenda item, or has any public comment been submitted?
There is no public comment.
So before we go forward, trustees, I don't know how we missed it on after all we wrote, but we will have to change the headings in the first section to C and D because we've crossed out item C.
Yes, thank you.
So we're just going to, so we're looking at approving everything, saying that on page 4, D, local control accountability plan will be actually C, and on page 5, setting direction for the district will be D. So 2 changes that are not actually. And maybe we can go through, starting with section 1. This is the changes to the reflect the current vision statement and district mission statement. So does anyone have any comments on those? We're okay with that? Okay, and then that was the change from might to may was discussed as well. We're going on to the evaluation of the district superintendent. How does everyone feel about the purple sentence that?
I think you skipped over page 7 first.
Did I skip something?
Sorry, no, it's up on top. My apologies. I'm sorry.
Okay, so so we're on section D for the superintendent evaluation. That was something that Lisa and I thought would be useful to insert so that we have the knowledge going forward for future. Okay, and then F. That's a helpful reminder for those of us who get too busy in August to look at their calendar. And on to E for the student board member. Joe, do you have any comments on the changes that we've made there?
I am in full support of the change. I especially think the participation change is most appreciated.
Okay. Thank you for your input, Joe. Go ahead, Julio. Oh, okay. And if I've missed anything, please stop me. We're on to item 13. Board members who will observe formal CC email. This was something that I think came up in our discussion. Just some confusion sometimes about when we're CC'd, do we have to respond if we're CC'd on an email? And this provides guidance. So is there
No, I think it's good. I think
Okay.
obviously having that process, because it does sometimes there is a gray area with responding or not responding. So I think the more laid out it is, it's easier for us just to go right to the handbook and kind of decide what to do. So I'm good with that.
I agree.
Okay. So often we do, just to remind everyone, often we do get CC'd on letters that are written to administrative staff, and then it is not our duty to respond to those letters. And then on to the next item would be the top of 14 for the uniform complaint process. That was just a very helpful reminder for all of us. The next two items we discussed at the last board meeting. And then we're on to the items on the orientation of a new board member on page 15, as well as the credit card charges. That's in line with standard practice at the district. And then item G on orienting a new board member.
I mean, just to comment on that, just so what the committee discussed under that is that obviously could go on for 5 pages, to all those. So we felt that we had to kind of hit the main points of that. And then between the mentorship, relationship that we've just tried to establish, that a lot of the blanks would be filled in. But, because I had done a lot of research, particularly on that section, and truly I found some handbooks had 7 pages alone on orienting, but we kind of felt that was maybe a little overkill. So that's why you're getting this section. And we think we hit the main points, but certainly if you have more to add or think that we've missed something, let us know.
I think it's great. I think it's really good. And I'm glad you added it.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I think just a simple fact that a lot of it has been informal, just kind of the way it's passed on to new board members. But I think just having that on paper in that section, it just gives more emphasis of supporting a new board member.
I think in the past, both of you were appointed board members, so we didn't have maybe something as formal in place as what we're trying to institute now. And Forrest, I would like your input on this as a new board member. What do you think going forward now?
It looks good as set forward in the new handbook language. I did have one question about the social media stuff that kind of got skipped over. Just to clarify, is merely referring to the fact that you are a board member inappropriate under that language, or is it more if you're speaking as a board member?
I think that whenever you say that you're a board member, you have to assume that people are going to think that you're speaking as a board member.
Okay.
That's the way CSBA. Well, that's the way it's interpreted by the public.
I just wanted to make sure that I understood.
Okay. So, are there any other questions? And Forrest, if you could give as much feedback as possible on the new board member orientation, that would be great. Also, Julio and Lisa, you are also newer board members. I don't know what kind of orientation you got, Jeannie. My orientation was pretty
Slim.
Yeah. Pretty. It was a different time, let's say. Do you think that we've filled in some of the gaps that you had? I mean, I know that we had gaps with
Right.
both.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm comfortable with this. And like I said, and you know me, I could be super wordy. I would like, there's always a lot of information, but I think this is ample. But I also believe that, it's a two-way street as well. So if you're coming new on something, you have people to reach out to. But this is a good framework to know. And I do believe the mentoring, factor is going to be huge because that was not in existence. So, and you don't want to fend for for yourself, so to speak, and find your own answers kind of thing. So I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, I agree. Just having that framework in place, and then obviously, like I said, like Lisa said, it is important to have, if you don't necessarily know, like when I was on the board or was appointed, I knew Jeannie, and so she was kind of the person that in a sense mentored me, and I would ask questions, reach out to her. But I think if you don't know anyone on the board, this is a great way to just have someone appointed that you can really feel like you can connect and ask questions. I think because at the beginning it is a little confusing as far as what your role is and kind of how everything works, and so I think it's important to have that framework in place. So.
And we can always, as we know, we do look at this on an annual basis too. So we could always add things as we feel fit. Like if you see something that you think that was missed, then we can certainly add it at another time. Yeah.
President Howe, do you mind if I ask a clarifying question?
Yes, go ahead, Joe.
The last section under the new board member states that new board members must attend CSBA orientation training within the first 100 days. If a new board member was to be appointed outside of that regular, what I would assume, orientation schedule, would there be an event where there would not be an orientation within that first 100 days?
The CSBA actually offers them almost every month.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Because they do have a lot of. Thank you for bringing that
Great,
up.
Great. Yeah. Thank you.
It's important information. Thank you, Joe. And it's for that very fact that there are board members that are appointed throughout the year in every district in the state. So.
Great. Thank you.
So, very good question. So we're looking to approve all the red, purple, and yellow highlighted text, yes? With the additional changes to the headings C and D in the first section.
And just to clarify, President Haug, the yellow has already been approved?
Yes.
So it's
Sorry.
just
Sorry,
the
it's just
the
the
changes in red and yellow.
red and
Purple.
purple.
One clarifying question. On the attachment of the orientation for potential candidates, it says 2020. Do we want to remove years from that? You know, I mean, election date says November 3rd, 2020. Do we just want to put November of, I mean, do we want to change it or just leave this as is for an example?
I'd like to leave it as is for an
Okay,
example,
perfect.
understanding, of
Yeah.
course, that in the event that there's an open seat at some point, that it would be updated.
Because this would obviously is the framework and the timelines don't necessarily change, just the year changes.
Well, exactly. And potentially there could be new information that would get added to it as
Perfect.
well. So it would be updated
Okay.
as appropriate.
Great. Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Madrigal, because I know that you had a big hand in editing this for us as well, and probably will after all is said and done. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So we are looking for a motion to approve the SHUSD Governance Handbook revision as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Joe, would you like to cast a preferential vote?
Aye.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. On to future agenda items, 14A. We have our board study session on February 25th. That will be the budget and enrollment options. That might be something that's of interest to members of the public as well. It is a study session, so it's more informal, but also you are able to attend via Zoom. And then on our March 2021 board meeting, we just, well, there are 14 items. And do any trustees have any subjects for future agenda items?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Joe, for all your presentations today. Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
I'll make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Joe, would you like to cast your preferential vote?
Aye.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.